Midgeonish le Keshtina Naganari Fui Boon Urdu Trukashe. I will now take leaders' questions under Standing Order 36. Matt McCarthy.
Of course, every political issue is put into perspective from our previous conversation and contributions. Taoiseach, Focus Ireland has published its annual report on homelessness, and it makes for alarming reading. The report states that rising homelessness in Ireland is not inevitable, but rather it is the result of the wrong political decisions, and that the crisis will only get worse this winter unless the government acts now with urgency. The words of Focus Ireland founder, Sister Stanillis Kennedy, captures the heartbreaking reality of this crisis, and I want to quote what Sister Stan says. She says, over 3,400 children who are homeless do not have the luxury of time. Their childhoods are being stolen as homelessness is causing young people to lose out on the safety of a permanent home. This situation is unacceptable and must end. Much greater political leadership and commitment is urgently required if we are to overcome the challenges our society faces in ending homelessness. End quote. Taoiseach, for 2 months in a row now, we've had record levels of homelessness reported. Within a month or two, unless something drastic changes, we will hit and exceed the shameful milestone of an official homelessness figure of 11,000 people. And the human stories behind this figure are stories of real hardship. Families living in tents, children growing up in hotels and B&Bs, not knowing the security of a place they can call home. Households transported and displaced out of their communities because there are no emergency accommodation places left in their own county. Approximately 60 families from Dublin are in emergency accommodation in Meath and Kildare. And there are a further 60 individuals from Dublin in emergency accommodation in Kildare. The government needs to act now with real intent. Given the scale of the challenge that now exists, I have to say the budget was deeply disappointing. There is no increase in social housing targets. In fact, the insufficient targets that are there will not be met this year. There was no funding for any new initiative to prevent the dramatic rise in homelessness. And even though the majority of those forced into homelessness are coming from the private rental sector, there was no ban on evictions. The truth is that without a significant change of direction in these areas, we are going to see more and more families pushed into homelessness and into the nightmare of a winter without a secure roof over their head. In the last week, the media has reported that the Department of Housing has only now started to liaise with the Attorney-General about the feasibility of introducing a winter ban on evictions. We saw last Corla during the pandemic that the state responded with emergency protections that safeguarded tenants. So we already know it's feasible because such an eviction ban was put in place as part of COVID measures. We see that the Scottish Government has already introduced an emergency winter ban on evictions from early September. A similar eviction ban is required here, and it has to be accompanied by an increase in the tenant in situ scheme. Instead, we hear that deliberations are at an early stage and that the government has not yet agreed to introduce an eviction ban. Homelessness is spiralling out of control. It is an emergency, Taoiseach, and the government must deliver an emergency response. I'm urging you, Taoiseach, to bring that urgency, to change direction and to immediately introduce a winter ban on evictions. With better political choices, the tide of homelessness and the crisis that we are facing can be turned. But the government must start today.
Thank the Deputy for raising this issue, because this is an issue that, in my view, goes to the heart of the kind of society we are and we want to be. And the government is very, very concerned about the increase in homelessness. And the government has a comprehensive suite of responses. And I think it's, first of all, we need to understand and assess the nature of homelessness in modern Ireland. It's different to what we might have traditionally perceived it to be. It's a changing dynamic all of the time in terms of the presentations that come on a monthly basis to the emergency accommodation sector, and which adds pressure on an ongoing basis. On the rental protection side, very significant protections have been brought in already to delay any evictions or to delay moving anyone out of homes. We've legislated to increase the notice to quit period for tenancies of 3 years duration or less. That's gone from 28 days to 3 months. And also where in a given position there's a risk of a tenant being evicted into homelessness as a result of a landlord selling the home, the local authority now has been told by the minister that they may buy that house to prevent anyone becoming homeless. And the resources are there to do that. In addition to that, the discretionary rate of HAP, the Housing Assistance Programme, has also been increased substantially, which again will enable, if you like, tenants to meet any increases in rent itself. And we have the rent pressure cap zones and so on. But more fundamentally, in terms of the issue that you raised in terms of a winter eviction ban, it's not today or yesterday that these issues are being considered by government. We considered it during COVID. And because the circumstances existed during COVID, which justified such a winter eviction ban, the government acted on that. That's just one potential option, but it's not the solution ultimately. And in fact, some of the homeless organisations would accept that it's not the solution, hence they talk about a temporary winter eviction ban. And there's other policy issues that have to be assessed in that context as well, to make sure that we have a significant supply into the rental market, which is a concern and which is a problem in terms of getting more houses back into the rental market to rent out to people, because there's been a decline in the number of houses that are available for rent since 2017. There's been a steady decline downwards, and we have to draw conclusions from that in terms of why people are exiting the rental market as landlords, as small landlords, and not maintaining the position of keeping their houses available for rent. On the social housing front, this year we'll have a record number of social houses built. And we have to increase upon that. The target is about 10,000 builds between approved social housing body and local authorities on an annual basis. We will get over 8,000 this year, which is a major increase, and we want to be consistently at above that figure for the next 10 years. So that every year we will be doing in and around 10,000 social houses. The Minister acted very quickly in the last 2 years to bring voids back into use. These are empty houses that local authorities may have taken time to repair and so on. We know, all of us know that in our different constituencies, but the Minister moved very quickly and said, we don't want any voids. We've given you now the resources to bring such houses back into use as quickly as they are vacated for whatever reason. And the cost rental initiative that the Minister has undertaken is also proving to be very effective. And obviously the last 15 months, 18 months it took to get that new scheme up and running. That's proving to be very effective and impactful also. But it is about supply, definitely. Ultimately it's about supply. We need to be building more houses than we are.
Thank you. Yeah.
Taoiseach, you say that homelessness goes to the heart of the type of society we want to be. What does it say about our society under your government that homelessness figures are rising month on month and are now reaching, as I say, what would be the horrendous scandal of 11,000 people homeless? They're real people. They're people's sons, daughters, nieces, nephews, neighbours. And you indicate that the conditions need to be right. Precisely what conditions do we need to justify an eviction ban, considering those numbers? You indicated that during the COVID crisis the conditions were right for an eviction ban. I contend to you, Taoiseach, that the conditions are absolutely essential now for an eviction ban to be put in place. Of course, an eviction ban isn't the solution to the housing crisis. The solution to the housing crisis is to build houses. But in the here and now, I have to put it to you again, will you ensure that an eviction ban is put in place as a matter of absolute urgency?
The conditions that existed in COVID were we actually legally restricted people's movement in public health grounds to 5 kilometres, and in some instances to 2 kilometres early on. So very clear from a legal underpinning of any decisions we would take, very strong legal underpinning given the restrictions that government and public health interests put forward. Now, in the context of the current crisis, there are arguments, of course. That's the point, and the matter is under consideration by the Minister in respect of that aspect of it. But more fundamentally, we need to build more houses. and the government has increased the allocation. We are getting more houses built. This year, we will reach our target in terms of the overall number of houses built. I mean, you know, the reality is that if you look at home completions, commencements, permissions, home purchases, first-time buyers, mortgage drawdowns, they're encouraging this year, those figures. And they give us confidence that the government's overall 2022 supply target will be met. But we need to go higher than that every other year. And that means, and I said this consistently for everybody in the House, if we want to reach those targets into the future, if we really want to give us the supply that will be needed to reduce homelessness, then we need all to really put the shoulder to the wheel and ensure in every local authority in the country we allow housing projects through and get them through.